There are 29 people who only show up for a single match in any capacity on a beach. Whoop. Wow, didn't change that line. But I did change the stats. I know that.
Okay, good.
There are 29 people who only show up for a single 9 match in any single 9 match. What the heck am I saying?
Oh, we had a Greatest 18 match, so
That is true. That is true. Oh, I just found the show intro. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let's Go to the Ring, where we take a look at the good old days and not so good old days of World Championship Wrestling series by series. I'm your host, Bob Moore, and I'm joined by a 240p blurry figure who may be either Alec Pridgeon or Takayuki Iizuka. Can't be sure.
I get that a lot. It's really, really awkward at work. I try to show my name bad, but that doesn't really help resolution at all.
240p, yeah.
No.
It's hard to read that.
Yeah.
Well, thankfully I can tell from your voice, though.
That's good, at least, yes.
How's it going tonight, Al?
It's going right for me. How about you?
I feel a deep-seated sense of accomplishment, because we have finished our 7th series.
Oh, wow, yeah.
7th. Good gosh. WCW New Japan Supershows. And what a brilliant series this was. It's perhaps my favorite that we've ever done, and not just because there were only 3 shows. Just about everything on here was just plain fun, and there's not a bad show in the bunch. Tonight, we're going to take a look back over the Super Shows, play some guessing games, and hand out some awards. So I hope that you'll have fun listening and play along. There were 3 WCW New Japan Super Shows, running from 1991 through 1993. The first Super Show was in March, and the second and third both on January 4th of their respective years, the beginning of a long-running series for New Japan, but a much shorter one for WCW. Though this series did take place on pay-per-view, I was unable to find pay-per-view numbers for it. All 3 shows took place in the same location, the Tokyo Dome in Tokyo, Japan. All right, Al, you ready for some guesses?
I'll do my best.
All right, which show do you think was the highest attended, according to ProWrestlingHistory.com, anyway?
Ooh. I feel like maybe the first one, because that at very least had the big draw at the United States World Championship, sort of against their own. And with Flair on the card, I can see that being a big draw.
All right. In third place, we had 1992's Super Show 2 with 50,000. In second place, we had 1993's Super Show 3 with 53,500. And in first place, 1991's Super Show 1 with 54,500. So, all quite close.
Yeah.
It's all in the same arena for this one. Though, of course, the last 4 Starcades, I believe, were also in the same arena, and they had quite a decline. So,
yes, yeah. That is very true.
The match counts for this series ranged from 6 to 7. So, which shows, it's a tie, do you think had the most?
To remember the shows. I think 2 had a pretty good amount, as I recall. The third one, I recall, has a pretty good butchering done to it, which I think puts that at 6.
Okay, in second place, we have Super Show 3 with 6, like you thought.
All right.
And in first place, we have Super Show 1 and 2 tied with 7 each.
Okay.
Now, we've spent the last few months covering each individual Super Show, but what can we say about the series as a whole? What traits or themes stand out? Is there something that unifies the series? Is there anything that changes notably from 1991 through 1993? So, Al, what are your thoughts on some themes or just overall thoughts on the series?
I wrote a few down. We'll see a bunch of ours overlap. The most obvious theme I have is the theme of international competition.
Okay.
Something that really, really gets highlighted in the first show more so than the other ones, but still does fall through, is that the idea is here's these foreign wrestlers, in this case being mostly Americans or Canadians, come over to Japan and to improve dominance. Thankfully, it's not done the same way as like the takeover idea, like we would see in '95.
Yes.
It's a much more of a friendly competition. Like, it's like what we have now when the first game in football, they go to London or somewhere else and, do a game there, sort of a national kind of thing. That definitely shows up a lot in the first one because, again, you have the Flair Fujinami match. You also have the Steiners competing for the New Japan tag titles, stuff like that. That's the most obvious theme, obviously, of the show. Especially early on, you get a lot more of those mixed matches, whereas a little bit especially in the third show, as good as it is, it's a lot more of here's New Japan guys fighting more New Japan guys or fighting WAR guys.
Right.
Second theme I had was there's a real focus on the NWA title, which is something that really started to not be a thing in WCW due to, obviously, there was this agreement with the NWA, as we've discussed a little bit, and we'll definitely discuss more on other shows. And it's interesting because you get, even when there's some dispute between WCW and NWA, you have an NWA champion in New Japan defending the belt, which is intriguing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's definitely a big one there. Even the big match with Shono and Muda is for that belt and the New Japan belt, I believe, right?
Yes, I believe you're correct on that. I think Chono is NWA champion, not WCW champion.
Correct. Because they sort of kind of had that worked out, but obviously they don't really work that until '94. When they just get rid of the second belt and just here's one belt.
Yes, yeah. Well, and it spends a little time, obviously, as the WCW International belt in '93, so...
Which they could, I said before, they could do something like that if they really actually wanted to lean into the international aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
But, obviously they didn't really. Like, make it a belt. You have, like, you have a Mexican superstar or a Japanese superstar. They can win, and you could have it cast in Japan or in Mexico or the UK. Sting is trying to win this belt to show America's, can be better than country A or B. So lots of they could have done with that, but instead they just made it a fictional company called WCW International, which
yes.
exists inside WCW.
It was so weird.
Yeah. Not as much of a theme per se, but an observation is that there's a lot of focus on tag team wrestling throughout the series as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which Japan, in a way, I want to say more so than America, is really a thing. Again, I'm not a huge New Japan guy, but I'm at least sort of in the periphery, so I'm aware of a lot of what's going on, if I don't know every wrestler who holds every belt or who's in what group and so on and so forth. But the fact that New Japan, at least as far as I know, currently still they have heavyweight tag champions. They have light heavyweight or junior heavyweight, they call them, tag champions. So they have tag champions under a certain weight, which WCW kind of thought of that near the end of the run, a little too late.
Yeah. They did have the World and US tag titles, but those weren't different weight classes because the Steiners had both of them.
Exactly, yeah.
So they didn't really do the different weight classes for it. They just did higher and lower ranked ones, I guess.
Yeah. And I believe New Japan still currently has open weight tag belts as well. Plus, I think they have 6-man belts for every division as well. So they have a lot of tag wrestling.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay, that is reason number one why we will never do a New Japan focused entire podcast unless you take over match recapping.
Right, yeah. Finally, the other theme I had, and it's kind of an ironic one, is there's a theme on the actual show of sort of pageantry.
Yes.
Because they'll have grand entrances, and like on the shows, they have a band that plays people out. But WCW cut almost all of that out.
Very, very true. Yeah. There's more on the early shows, but the earliest show anyway. But yeah, definitely number 3 especially is just like chopped to shreds.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, like one of the shows, like, they have a band playing every single person out, but then all that cut down except for, I think, Muda's entrance on show 2, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
The Muda and Sting together. Yes, that's that's my sort of 4 themes, I guess you could say, for the show.
Well, you definitely touched on some of the points that I was thinking of as well.
Oh, yeah.
First theme, like you, kind of looked at it as interpromotional matches. Well, the international competition theme kind of is most focused on show 1. I think you see the interpromotional matches throughout the entire series.
Agreed, yeah.
It just doesn't have as much of a US and Japan theme. It's more just the 2 different companies from that point.
Mm-hmm.
We get a ton of those across the series, though. We have Flair versus Fujinami, the Steiners versus Hase and Sasaki, Pillman, Horner, and Z-Man versus Koshinaka, Kobayashi, and Iizuka.
Yep.
Luger versus Chono, Sting versus Hase, plenty more. You get the point.
Mm-hmm.
They crop up all through the series and are clearly the main focus of WCW's promotion of the shows, and they're really cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's really great to see our familiar favorites face off against new faces, and I'm glad that that lasts through the entire series. It's like we got 3 Starrcade 1995s, and we really liked Starrcade 1995.
That's true, yeah.
But as you pointed out, it's quite interesting that unlike Starrcade 1995, they didn't really put on a kind of like full interpromotional storyline.
No.
Each match is independent of the others rather than being about the overall organizations trying to score points with each other as groups. As with you, it's not a complaint. I think that 3 shows with a show-long story of organization versus organization would have gotten a little repetitive.
Yeah.
But I just find it really interesting that you don't get that kind of tale when it's such a natural thing that you could see them deciding to do.
So yeah, could you imagine if they introduce an outside group trying to come in and take over WCW and run it for like 4 years nonstop, way past the point people care about it?
Yeah.
Can't imagine to do. It'd be stupid enough to do that.
Can't imagine, yeah.
No.
Seems like the kind of thing that might be a hit for a little while and get them good business, but then they'd, it just would go on too long. And I hope they never do that.
I hope, hopefully not.
What you do get, though, is a lot of highlighting of what makes the two organizations different from each other. Tony and JR talk about differences in the rules, especially on the first show, but also spend a great deal of time, and snark, discussing how New Japan's wrestlers, referees, and such differ from WCW's.
True, yeah.
Surprisingly, they frequently end up praising New Japan over their own company.
Yeah.
Which is not how that sort of thing usually goes when wrestling promotions bring up other wrestling promotions.
That's very true, yeah.
It genuinely feels like they are finding it refreshing to get away from a lot of the usual American wrestling referee bumps and rule breaking to get to watch matches with stories more about pure athletic contest.
Mm-hmm.
And I get it. I do enjoy a good ref bump or a bad ref bump, Nick Patrick Hogg Wild.
Of course, yeah.
But it was neat to not only see matches that had a different feel from the norm, but to hear the commentary team noting that difference and praising it.
Yeah.
Not that we didn't have a very important ref bump on the series, of course. They still happen. It just doesn't feel like the go-to tactic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A somewhat surprising thing for me as well was just how often the shows focused on matches that had little to nothing to do with WCW.
Yeah.
To be fair, it's not like they step entirely into the unknown most of the time. Muda was a WCW regular, and Chono, Liger, Fujinami, and Iizuka all have one or more WCW appearances over the time span of this series, so even matches that don't directly feature WCW guys do generally feature at least one performer who will be familiar to WCW fans to some extent.
Right.
But still, it's really cool to see matches like Liger, Nagami, Aoyagi versus Saito, Hanaga, Machine, Liger versus Nagami, the New Japan versus War 6-man, Liger versus Dragon, and Fujinami versus Choshu, making the series despite having little to do with the company selecting the matches for the series.
Mm-hmm.
Muda versus Chono too, though that is for the NWA title. It's evidence that the folks editing the WCW versions were valuing more than just their own company, and really wanted to give the fans something different, and I appreciate that. We were already getting to see WCW guys in different situations, but we even get to see matches composed entirely of less familiar wrestlers, so we get a totally new experience.
Agreed, yeah.
Lastly, and you brought this up as well, there's an unfortunate theme that increases over the course of the series, and that's cuts.
Yeah.
Every show cuts several matches, and many of those cuts are painful, but you may or may not recognize that from watching the shows themselves. What you will definitely recognize is the decreasing amount of importance assigned to the shows.
Mm-hmm.
From Supershow 1 having lots of expansive ceremony and presentation flair, and Ric Flair, to Supershow 3 having, well, basically none.
Yeah.
Even cutting away from matches mere seconds after the pinfall, even with quite important matches like ones for world titles.
Yeah, it's true, yeah.
Supershow 1 feels almost like a normal pay-per-view, and Supershow 2 has its moments of story and importance, like Fujinami and Choshu's joint celebration. But Supershow 3, it's like the editing team got the matches chosen and went home for the night, then an intern grabbed the half-finished tape and sent it to production by mistake.
I mean, It's possible.
It's entirely... Yeah, it sounds very plausible.
Yeah.
You get a real feeling that WCW valued these shows less and less each year, and it's an unfortunate mark against an otherwise great series. But it's still a great series. Tons of great, unusual matches, a very different atmosphere, and overall high action quality combined to make this easily one of my favorites, quite possibly my single favorite series that we've done. We may have gotten 3 partial shows that were varying degrees of chopped to shreds in sort of importance, but they were still good despite that, which should tell you a lot about the quality of the series.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah.
I'm going to look back very fondly on this one.
Yeah. As I said, other than the sort of lessening importance that they seem to give it, the actual show quality is very high.
Yeah. Well, we've had a look at the overall show stats, but now let's take a look at some interesting data that I've gathered on the performers who appeared on the shows. So, Al, you ready to start with some guessing?
Sure. Let's go for it.
Start with some guessing. You already did some guessing. You ready to continue with some guessing?
Yes.
So, first up, who appeared as a competitor in the most matches? As you might guess, with this being a short series, this is an enormous list.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, there are 28 people in third place with 1 match each, so I'm going to start listing with second place.
Fair enough.
So, Al, can you name just one of the people in first place?
I mean, Sting is an obvious one. Sting's on all 3 shows.
Yep. Okay, so in second place, we have a 9-way tie with 2 matches each. Arn Anderson, Elegante, Tatsumi Fujinami, Hiroshi Hase, Takayuki Iizuka, Shiro Koshinaka, Dustin Rhodes, Rick Steiner, and Scott Steiner. And in first place, we have a 6-way tie with 3 matches each, so all these people had 1 match on each show. Masahiro Chono,
Yep.
The Great Muta,
Mm-hmm.
Jushin Thunder Liger,
Of course, yeah.
Akira Nogami,
Oh, yeah.
Masanori Saito,
Oh, yeah.
and Sting.
Mm-hmm.
But that's matches overall. So who was a competitor in the most main events? So I'm only counting actual main events from the WCW perspective.
Yeah. It's not complicated things. Yeah.
Yeah. So the final aired match of the show, the WCW version of the show. So not necessarily the final match on the actual show in Japan.
Right.
So who's your guess for most main events?
Oh, it's got to be Sting, because I know Sting's match with the Steiners was main event show 2, and I'm 99% certain they put him and Hase as main event on the WCW one for show 3.
All right. In second, we have a 6-way tie with 1 main event each for Ric Flair, Tatsumi Fujinami,
Mm-hmm.
The Great Muta, Hiroshi Hase, Rick Steiner, and Scott Steiner. And in first place, indeed, with 2 main events, this is Sting. But a show is not just about competitors. There's all sorts of other roles to fill. So next up, we have the commentary team. This one's entirely obvious, so I'm not going to make you guess.
Yeah.
So for the most matches called by commentator, in second place, with 1 match called,
Yeah.
Eric Bischoff. And in first place, a 2-way tie with 19 matches called, all of them together, Tony Schiavone and JR. They did all but 1 match on the series.
Yeah.
Normally, next up would be managers, but aside from having seconds for some matches, there weren't really any managers for this series, and the seconds weren't called out by name reliably enough for me to get their information. So good news, Al, you don't have to recall managers for this one. I know you
Nice.
tend to struggle with that one.
Yeah.
We will also be skipping the referee list this time, as for most of the matches, I don't have the names of the referees.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, we've talked a lot about the people with a ton of appearances, but what about the people with the fewest? There are 29 people who only show up for a single match in any capacity on a Super Show. Of the 29, 3 of them actually took home Match of the Night honors as competitors for their single appearance. Riki Choshu, Kensuke Sasaki, and Ultimo Dragon. We had some really, really surprising names on the list this time, too. Eric Bischoff, Ric Flair,
Yeah.
Lex Luger, Dusty Rhodes, and Big Van Vader.
Yeah, that's true.
Some of the biggest and most frequent names on some of our prior series there.
It's true, yeah.
All right, last but not least, let's take a look at who has taken home the coveted Match of the Night and MVP awards. First up, for each host, who took home the most MVP awards? So, Al, it is know thyself time. You ready?
I'll do my best.
So, you never voted for the same person twice.
That sounds right.
So, I'm going to give you 5 guesses to get all 3 names on your list.
Okay. I remember picking Choshu because I really thought he stood out in that title match.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Sting is usually a good guess. I'm trying to think of what I might have picked him maybe for show 2, but I don't recall. I feel like I picked Fujinami, or I definitely was thinking about Fujinami based on show 1.
Yes, you did.
Okay, good.
So that's 2 of them.
Show 3 is the one I haven't done yet then.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pretty sure that's going to be Liger. I picked him for the main. Or did I not pick him? I know I picked his match.
No, you picked his match, but you did your normal look for someone else.
That's right. I did that, didn't I? I make this so hard for myself, don't I? I really do. I can't help it. I'm trying to think of other matches. I think the last show we did would be easier.
I find it often isn't. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want a hint?
Sure.
High pressure pinfall.
Oh, did I pick Muda?
You did.
You
picked Muda, yes.
That's right.
All right, that's success. You had Tatsumi Fujinami, Riki Choshu, and the Great Muta. For me this time, I also didn't ever pick the same person twice either. So again, 5 guesses, 3 names.
I'm trying to think if you would have picked Fujinami for show 2, it's because I picked Chosu for that.
I did not.
Oh, interesting. I feel like you picked Sting at least one, because Sting obviously was on 3 shows.
I surprisingly did not do that either, actually.
Oh, yeah, it's not. I'm trying to think of the 2 if you would have picked Liger or Dragon. I think Liger is generally a pretty safe guess.
Generally, it would be. In this series, apparently not.
Oh, okay. Oh, I know you went outside. You picked Hase at some point, didn't you? I know you really liked Hase.
I picked Hase, yes, that's one of them.
Gotcha.
So got 1 guess left. You can get one of the remaining 2.
I feel like you might have picked Zabisco based on that tag match.
I did, yes. Zabisco is one of them as well.
There you go.
All right, so my 3 names are Hiroshi Hase, Larry Zabisco, and Masayo Orihara.
Oh, right, yeah, off the 6-man match.
The guy who got the crap kicked out of him in that 6-man tag.
That's right.
He just really impressed me with his selling that night. It was really good.
Yeah.
Till he got knocked unconscious.
Yeah, I know. Nobody's perfect.
So, that means we did not collectively ever pick anyone more than once.
So funny.
So we will skip our usual top MVP question because all 6 guys got the same amount.
Fair enough.
I don't think that's happened before, actually. I think we've always had at least one shared pick somewhere in the series.
Yeah, because usually a match will come up, like when we go back to is the Steamboat Rude match, or we'll have some amazing like Steamboat Flair match or something like that, or a Sting Flair match, yeah.
All right, speaking of matches, for Match of the Night participations, we are looking only at competitors. Let's see, you have a whole bunch of names, each of which only got the Match of the Night once. I'm not going to make you try and get the entire list, so let's do 5 choices for at least 3 of the names.
Okay. I know I picked Chosu and Fujinami for show 2.
All right. Yep, that's 2 of them then.
Do you remember when I picked show 1? Part of me thinks I might have done the main event, but it has that finish and that sometimes sours me. I think I did still end up picking that match, the Fujinami Flair match.
You did not.
Oh, that's what I did. I definitely steered it more than a match I would normally with that sort of weird, screwy, dusty finish ever.
Yeah, I know it was in your consideration, but yeah.
Oh, of course. Liger and Dragon is show 3.
Yes.
Duh.
So, your match of the night choices, Al, were for show 1, the Steiners versus Sasaki and Hase. So that's Rick Steiner, Scott Steiner, Kensuke Sasaki, and Hiroshi Hase.
Okay.
Then for show 2, it was Tatsumi Fujinami versus Riki Choshu. And for show 3, it was indeed Jushin Thunder Liger versus Ultimo Dragon. So guess what?
What?
I picked exactly the same matches of the night as you on every single show. That's an exact reversal of what happened with our MVPs.
That's funny.
So that means our two lists are the same, and therefore so is the top match of the night list, as everyone got exactly 2 votes.
That's fair, yeah.
That, again, has never happened, I don't think.
Yeah, it's interesting because we talked about this. We've had shows where there's like one good match, or like there's might not be a great match on the show. So then we try to get a little more creative and go, did they do a good job in situation in spite of things? And then there's shows like the series where there's so many good matches, and you really got to decide: am I picking this Flair Fujinami match, or am I picking this tag match?
Mm-hmm.
And then that makes those decisions harder to do for sure.
Yeah, it is genuinely fascinating to me that on a series as awash in great matches as this series is, that we agreed every night.
That is fascinating.
Yeah, I would not have called that.
Not at all, no.
All right, with the show-specific stats done, how about we take a look at the overall stats?
Okay.
So these stats cover every wrestling show that we've covered. But, Al, the standings have not actually altered since last time.
Okay.
So I'm not going to make you guess for this set because that would be repetitive.
Fair enough.
But I will go over them again just to update some numbers. We have appearances as a match competitor overall. In third place with 33 matches now is Lex Luger.
Okay.
In second place with 40 matches now is Ric Flair. And in first place with 47 matches now, this is Sting. Appearances as a match competitor in main events. In third place with 14 is Hulk Hogan.
Okay.
In second place with 18, Sting. And in first place, still holding on, with 20, Ric Flair. Commentators. In third place with 130 matches called, JR. In second place with 218 matches called, Bobby the Brain Heenan. Obviously, he didn't get any new ones on this series, but he had plenty.
Yeah.
And in first place, with 368 matches called, 150 more matches than Bobby Heenan, is unsurprisingly Tony Schiavone.
Yeah.
Just amazing, the sheer scale of that, though. It's always surprising. He's just so reliably on the shows.
Yeah. Because he goes to WWF for about a year, right?
Yeah, he comes back in 1990. In fact, I believe Capital Combat is his first show back.
Gotcha.
Which may have relevance later tonight.
Right. Well, I was thinking, look, even if admittedly, it's really covering all of those shows where he's not there for. Admittedly, it's not at the time when it's the 11 to 12 pay-per-views per year thing, so that's also a factor.
Right.
Like, even when we do all those shows, I'm curious if we're able to bump, JR up at all. I think that lead is insurmountable, right?
Yeah, honestly, I'd be surprised if Bobby the Heenan ever gets taken out of second place even.
Yeah. Well, we obviously haven't covered as much of the later stuff, but obviously they have Take 'Em Up your review in 2000 and 2001, which is a real loss. So yeah, he's got a cutoff point as well.
Referees. So looking at all referee appearances, whether they were the original ref or came out as a replacement or to rectify a call. In third place, we have, with 35 matches called, Mickey J. In second place, quite a bit higher, with 78, is Randy Anderson. And in first place, still in the lead, with 109, the ever-trustworthy Nick Patrick.
Of course.
The top 3 positions do not change if we use only initial ref appearances. Mickey J loses 1 replacement appearance to hit 34. Anderson loses 1 replacement and 1 rectifying appearance to hit 76. And Patrick loses 6 replacement referee appearances to hit 103. MVP choices. So again, none of this has actually changed since last time we checked in, astonishingly enough.
Mm-hmm.
But just as a refresher, here we go. So first up by host, for you had Sting with 9 votes. For me, we have a tie with 6 votes each, Sting and Diamond Dallas Page. And for John, it was Dusty Rhodes with 3.
Gotcha.
So all of us together in third place with 9 awards, Ric Flair. In second place with 10 awards, Diamond Dallas Page. And in first place, still at 17 MVP awards, this is Sting.
Yeah, so the only thing that really could have changed on this ranking is if, one of us had picked Sting at some point for MVP.
Yeah.
Like, if you had picked him, because that would have taken him out of his tie.
Or if both of us had picked Ric Flair the first time, it would have switched him above DDP in the overall list.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
So there were definitely some potential changes on this series, but they just didn't emerge.
Fair enough.
Match of the night competitors. So again, going by host first, Sting has gotten 9 awards from you, Al.
All right.
And for me, it is a tie with 9 awards each, Ric Flair and Diamond Dallas Page. And for John, it was the Road Warriors, Hawk and Animal, each getting 4. So for all of us together, in third place, we have a tie with 15 Match of the Night awards each, Diamond Dallas Page and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. In second place, with 18 Match of the Night awards, Ric Flair. And in first place, with 20 Match of the Night awards, is once again the man called Sting.
Gotcha.
So again, definitely there could have been some changes there, especially if Ric Flair had ended up with one for his match with Fujinami.
Mm-hmm.
But both of us ended up picking the Steiners versus Sasaki and Hase on that show, so no changes.
Gotcha.
All right, and finally, our traditional Tully check. Tully has not changed positions since last time either, meaning that he is still hanging out, tied for 9th place with Barry Windham. But as a reminder, here are the current standings for this absolutely critical award.
Yes.
In 4th place, with 14 matches of the night, Chris Benoit.
Ah, yeah.
In 5th place, with 12 matches of the night, is Vader. In 6th place, with 11 matches of the night, Rey Mysterio Jr. In 7th, with 10 matches of the night, is Jeff Jarrett.
Yeah.
In 8th place, we have a tie with 9 matches of the night each, Arn Anderson and Lex Luger. And in 9th place, we have another tie with 8 matches of the night each, is Barry Windham and Tully Blanchard, still hanging on in the top 10.
Yeah, so if one of us had, or both of us had picked that Arn Windham match, that could have affected Stake slightly, but didn't end up doing that.
Yeah, definitely. This was a dangerous series for Tully. He might have gotten knocked out of the top 10 if certain awards were handed out.
Yeah.
I'm genuinely curious how long this is going to last, because we have not gotten back to another series that has much in the way of Tully matches.
No, it's true.
So it'll be interesting to see if he keeps hanging on up there.
Yeah, right.
With all the data out of the way, it is time to give out some series awards. Each show, we've awarded our Match of the Night and MVP, but now we're going to look at things across the entire series. So to start out, let's go for our series MVPs. You can name 3 people in no particular order. So Al, who are your series MVPs?
Okay, a couple of these were easy, but I really struggled with who I put in as my third position here. It's one of those good hard choices because I'm thinking, man,
Yes.
Should I get this person? I've back and forth a lot on them. So going MVPs, 3 words come to mind initially: Jushin Thunder Liger.
Absolutely.
All 3 shows he has good performances on. Admittedly, the first one is not as great. We're still not sure if that's a booking thing or an injury thing, but even if the match isn't the greatest thing, his sheer presence, like the style he brings in with his outfits and his attire.
Yes.
He, again, showed really well in the 6-man match, and of course, took match of the night for both of us with his match with the Dragon, so there's no way I'm looking for this. Second, someone that didn't appear in all 3, but for me, their appearances in 2 shows were so strong that I couldn't ignore him, and that's Tatsumi Fujinami.
Oh, yeah.
obviously you get him and Flair, which is a great match. Finish aside, just to book a rematch. His performance is just so good in that. Obviously, Flair can make so many people look good, but it's still something special you get with Fujinami that shows why this man wrestled. I think still partly sometimes wrestles for I think longer than I've been alive. So hey, fair play to him. But at least around the same period of time.
I mean, that is the thing, right? Like you get with a Fujinami or a Sting or a Ricky Steamboat or something. Is like, yes, Flair can make everyone look good, but sometimes he doesn't have to work at it.
Yes.
Because they just legitimately are really, really great.
Yeah.
And I think Fujinami definitely joins that club of people that can just go.
Oh, yeah.
And really, really work alongside Flair to build a tremendous contest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, I don't mean this as a knock on Luger, but you can tell, for instance, seeing Flair work with young Luger in 87, 88, or even a couple years later, as we talk about, and how he sort of elevates Luger's game by giving him a strong foot to play off of, playing to his strengths in the match laid out for him, versus a guy like Fujinami who is just so talented that, yes, he does still all those tricks of the beg off and the figure four escape and everything, but it's definitely a difference between when he needs to elevate a guy versus they just so naturally mesh well together.
They're equal partners in the match.
Absolutely. So again, the third choice is one I really went back and forth on. So many people I could have picked, and it's going to be hard. Even if I written down one, I'm still second guessing myself, or third or fourth guessing myself.
I know the feeling.
So my third choice is two people, because you really can't separate them. And it's a little conditional for me because they technically only appear on two shows, but I covered their match on the third show that was cut.
Gotcha. And
it's so good that I didn't want to exclude them. So my third choice MVP is Rick and Scott, the Steiner brothers.
Fair enough. Yeah, they are really, really excellent on this series. Absolutely.
It's really hard not to pick from someone like Chono, who delivered in all three shows, or Muda, who delivered really strongly, or Hase even. Again, a guy I'm not as familiar with, but he's really strong. But yeah, Steiner brothers across the three shows, I think, stand out for me.
All right. For me, we have agreement on two of these.
Okay.
So first up, yes, Jushin Thunder Liger. While his first appearance is a little bit underwhelming, due at least possibly to editing, he still puts on a really good show in it. His second appearance in his six-man tag is excellent, however, and then he absolutely nails his third appearance, putting on a bonkers match with Ultimo Dragon that lives up to his dream match billing, and of course took match of the night.
Mm-hmm.
So a reliably great performer.
Absolutely.
Second, Tatsumi Fujinami.
Mm-hmm.
While he only has two matches on the series, both of them are excellent, one earning match of the night honors. A ton is put on Fujinami's shoulders in Super Show 1, and his match with Flair absolutely delivers on the promise of an intense battle between two wrestlers from two different organizations in two different nations. His match with Choshu, meanwhile, manages to convey in a single match an entire long history between two storied wrestlers, and Fujinami does a lot to up the emotion and aggression in that match while still maintaining the largely respectful rivalry at the heart of it. And third, for me, Hiroshi Hase.
I thought so.
Like Fujinami, he only has two matches on the series, but one got match of the night, and the other was a strong candidate for it. Hase is quick, precise, and incredibly charismatic, a skilled performer in the ring who just comes off as incredibly likable in every appearance that we've seen. He's one of the few guys that I can watch in a match against Sting without automatically rooting for Sting, which says a lot, I think.
Mm-hmm. It's still bonkers to me looking back that he has a match with Antonio Inoki on show 2 and they cut it.
It's amazing. It's like that. Oh, that's so insane.
The fact that we covered a 3-show series that's WCW coming to New Japan, not one Inoki match.
Yes. And admittedly, one of those is because he's got an injury.
Yes.
But, I mean, still, that is incredible that somehow they dodged Inoki. Maybe that's the entire reason they went along with his Collision in Korea thing. Like, we got to apologize to Inoki somehow.
Yeah, right?
Honorable mentions I do have for Masahiro Chono, the Great Muda, and Sting himself, all of whom were reliably great performers on the series and so much fun to watch.
Agreed, yeah.
Series MVP is always a terribly hard decision, but it felt brutal this time with such stellar performances all around.
Mm-hmm.
Matches of the series. So 3 matches in no particular order. So for your match of the series, Al?
Okay, so first one is the obvious choice. It is Liger and Dragon, as we talked about at length, but rightfully so on the last episode. It's an amazing match because it's 2 matches.
Yes.
They work this slow but steady, constant action, which is hard to even explain, technical match where they're rolling in and out of holds. There's very little striking. There's like no top rope moves or anything. And then they switch after working like it'd be a full match. Hell, it might be 2 matches in the Nitro era, or in Thunder era for that matter. They then basically work a second match where they do what you expect a Dragon Liger match to be. Like it's all the spots you expect, the counters, reversals, strikes, all of that. After working a technical classic. So obviously that's got to make the list. And I got, of course, show 3. Second pick for me is the Riki Shosu Tetsumu Fujinami match from show 2. A match that we didn't think we were going to get when we first watched it. Because again, it's worth mentioning the wiki page still lists this as a dark match, implying that it's not supposed to be on the pay-per-view broadcast. But of course, it was because we watched it.
Yeah, that surprised both of us, and it was such a good surprise.
Yeah, it's a great surprise. So because I love it, sure, because it's for there's no American stake to it.
Right.
It's not like the Chono Muda match where it's for the NWA title with one of the 2 belts. It's the Grace 18 Club Championship, their weird Hall of Fame championship belt, and the New Japan title.
Mm-hmm.
As you said, they tell such a good story in that match that makes you know, even if you've not watched any of their stuff before, like I surely haven't, you can tell these guys have been wrestling on and off for a decade or so, trading world titles back in these big high stakes matches.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good. Again, third choice is always hard with these on a show this many quality matches. For me, I wanted to give some variety and really highlight other stuff the show has besides these amazing title matches. So unfortunately, that means including Chono and Muda, which is a really good match as well, especially over delivers compared to their previous match in America. So I wanted to highlight a tag match because there are quite a few of those. So for me, the one that I picked is the Enforcers versus Ohara Koshinaka tag match, which is from show 2.
Okay.
The reason why I picked that is, for me, that really embodied the theme of the WCW versus New Japan, the American wrestling style versus the Japanese wrestling style, and the American wrestler, the very brash, talkative, one like Zbyszko.
Gotcha.
And the less talkative, but definitely still body language style of Arn Anderson. There's a couple really good tag matches that sort of embody that, like we had with the Steiners, Vitasi and Chon, which I almost picked as well, or even the sentimental favorite, which is the Saito Duck match against Dusty and Dustin Rhodes. But yeah, the one that embodied the theme, again, what the show was going for, one of the many themes of the international competition, the us versus them, here's how different we are versus, how can we mesh, is that match. So yeah, it was my dark horse third match pick.
I like that. That makes perfect sense to me. That one is the most clashes of different styles,
mm-hmm.
where the Steiners ones are great, but the Steiners adapt very much to the normal Japanese style.
Mm-hmm.
So they're doing a Japanese style tag match more that just happens to have an American team, where the Enforcers one is very much a contest between 2 completely different styles of performing, which is very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, almost picked the other Arn match, which is Arn and Wyndham, which is good too, but
that's also so good, yeah.
The sort of special sauce that is Zbyszko and how we interacted on this show with this crowd is really sealed it for me.
That's why he got an MVP from me. Yep.
I get it. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, for me, Super Show 3, Liger versus Dragon. As you said, it was simply incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Liger and Dragon put on an amazing show that effectively consisted of 2 completely separate match designs merged together quite gracefully.
Yeah.
Demonstrating the true variety of skills that they each possess. It's terrific.
Uh-huh.
I also picked Fujinami versus Choshu. Knowing nothing about Choshu and next to nothing about Fujinami, I was still able to feel the history and intensity of the feud between these 2 wrestlers and get a sense of the stories that had come before from this one match. had a really epic ending, and we had one heck of a performance.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, for me, Super Show 1, the Steiners versus Sasaki and Hase. This was a pre-match of a match that we loved/will love on Collision in Korea.
Yes, that's true.
It was fast-paced and constantly changing, and it was a match between two tag teams at the very top of their game. It was so much fun to watch. Plus, it was a noteworthy achievement for the Steiners in getting a third tag title at one time. Somewhat unsurprisingly, those were my 3 matches of the night for the series.
Yeah, that's fair.
As a runner-up, I believe you mentioned this one as well, Super Show 3's Muta versus Chono was just an amazing match and a really great redemption for that pairing.
Absolutely, yes.
All right, now the awards that nobody wants. So first up, least valuable performers, the people that either didn't add anything or actively took away from the shows. So with this one, you can pick up to 3.
Okay, so again, my first pick is always the obvious pick. And again, nothing personal against the guy. I'm sure he was a very lovely man. But El Gigante was not good in either show. There was a certain sort of weird appeal. He kind of skated by a little bit on the first show where he had, he spent like 45 seconds to a minute building up a suplex.
it was a while.
The crowd was oddly into it, yeah. But objectively, it's the worst match on the show because you don't have, like a so-so mid-card match, like you might have on another WCW show. And obviously a little bias against him because he had a less than exciting match against Vader. So that messes with my love of Vader. Again, I'm sure he was a very nice person, but he did not do well on this show. Second for me, again, I do feel a little bad because in this case, because he only had one chance to show it because they cut one of his matches on the previous show. But that's Tony Home, aka or Home, still undecided.
Whichever way, yeah.
Whichever you would decide is fine. He's okay, but show 3 has so many strong matches that just kind of being okay really stands out.
Mm-hmm.
Importance wise, poor Ron Simmons comes like a week and a half or so off of losing his world title on a house show because I guess the back off people to kind of given up on the idea of him as world champion. And he's thrown on here against Tony. It's not even like the third match on the show total. And it's like, oh, he's your world champion like less than 14 days ago. But okay. It's those matches they really was hoping like I could see some sort of big standout go, oh, wow, this guy is way more than I thought it was. But I mean, he's not terrible, but it's very so.
I get you. Yeah.
I didn't really think I had a third strong pick for this one. Thankfully, it gets a high show quality, so I didn't want to put third person in.
Okay. Yeah, I can see the other argument for Tony Holm being that he also is one of the only guys that we've seen take a Ron Simmons spinebuster badly. So
yeah,
that's definitely a mark against you for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
But for me, I'm not going to pick anyone.
Oh, okay.
We say up to 3, and that includes 0.
Yeah, that's fair.
There are a couple names I could theoretically pick. I was thinking of Elegante, and I was also thinking of Eric Bischoff.
Yeah.
But Elegante does well enough in his match with Vader, I thought, to make up for his match with Big Cat. And also the crowd in his match with Big Cat was fun enough that it kind of still made it semi-enjoyable. And Bischoff, while clearly not really prepared to deliver commentary on the 6-man tag in 1993's show, still has really good energy, enthusiasm, and coverage of kicks that did help me enjoy the match in the end.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the closest options I could find on the series, and I'm mentioning them purely to say that they are not bad enough to get me there, which should tell you how good this series is.
Yeah, that's fair.
Worst matches of the series. Again, pick up to 3.
Going off of my picks, you can probably see where this is going. I have El Gigante versus Big Cat. Like I said, he has a sort of interesting appeal for this Japanese crowd. He comes out, they're sort of genuinely in awe of this giant, elongated man, this sort of Argentinian Stretch Armstrong character. But when you get down to it, the biggest move in the match is him doing a real basic suplex on the guy, and then a big boot that didn't, I think, was like at the guy's stomach, if that.
It kind of hops and side kicks him in the gut, yes.
Yeah. This is New Japan. This is the early 90s. There's such a high work rate. It's that it really stands out. if this is the same year in WCW, they could be like a really lackluster tag match, or just kind of underwhelming, where they throw two guys that aren't quite ready for pay-per-view, but they throw them out there anyways. Like your Jungle Jim Steel or somebody. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe this isn't that bad, but on this show, it really stands out more than it would anywhere else.
Yeah, I can see that.
Second match, again, going off of early picks, is the Ron Simmons versus Tony Halme or Home match from show 3. As you said, he doesn't take a spinebuster well, which is incredible. A Ron Simmons spinebuster of all things.
Mm-hmm.
It was a certain interesting appeal for me going into this match because I know him very little because I did not watch wrestling, especially WWF, when he was around as Ludwig Borga. I've seen highlights of his stuff. With his look initially, he kind of has an early Brock Lesnar shoot tough guy kind of look. But then he didn't do a whole lot. And they didn't really botch that much. You had some spots like the Spinebuster that didn't really go well. But yeah, it's very disappointing. Again, on a high work rate show, and a high work rate series, and a high work rate country, there's less leeway for you to be underwhelming, I'd say.
Yeah.
I will pick a third one, but it's a real conditional one. As a total package, the New Japan versus War 6-man is kind of a mess. Just because the way they handled it, where they didn't have the normal commentary team covering it, so they had Bischoff in a booth probably like a month later, it felt like, by himself calling it.
Felt like roughly a day before they sent the video out, frankly.
Yeah, it's very bad. If this match was in like the rest of the show, with Shivani and Ross calling it, statistically, you think they would have more than the two names between two people.
Yes.
If Bischoff can get 2, they can get at least 4, right?
Well, and he didn't get 2, as we established. He got he got 1.5 because he had one of the other names, but was wrong about which guy it was.
Yeah. He didn't put the names in the right places on the board, but he had 2 names. That's something. Yeah, so again, this match on its own is not terrible. And again, likewise, if this match was in like the rest of the show, it would be fine. But it has the stigma about it. Plus, you have the matches that was cut from it because of whatever reason happened. And this was sort of thrown on last minute. So not against people involved in the match, because one guy especially really works hard and gets his ass kicked throughout it, and really, and you said, really did sell the whole thing well. So conditionally, this is the third worst match in the series for me.
All right.
Only because so much fate is working against it, unfortunately.
It's more about the presentation of it than anything else, basically.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that's fair. That's part of the match on a wrestling show, is the show part.
Yeah.
So I think that's a fair opinion.
Yeah. Also worth mentioning that 6-man match was, again, supposed to be part of a show-run story about this rival company, WAR, or War, coming and competing with New Japan, which commentators didn't cover and nobody else covers. So here's 3 guys you've never seen before if you watch the other 2 Super Shows, versus 2 guys you kind of recognize in the 6-man match. And now here's like Bischoff in a booth calling it and doesn't know who anyone is properly. It's a shame.
All right, for me, I went back and forth on this a lot.
Sure.
But again, I don't have a match I want to award this to.
All right.
Elegante versus Big Cat on Super Show 1 was pretty dull, but it was helped by the fact that the crowd is so clearly into it, and Elegante is so clearly enjoying the reaction that he's getting. And for me, that was as close as the series got to bad.
I will say as well, the Elegante Vader match, without the post-match stuff, is a strong contender, because I love Vader. Obviously not a big fan of Elegante, but they don't really do like anything in the whole match.
I think what saved that one from consideration for me was, 1, the helmet spot, and 2, the fact that Elegante does seem to be trying harder with his like punches
a little bit, yeah,
than normal.
Mm-hmm.
At the very least, I could look at him and be like, I think he's trying.
Oh yeah.
I felt like he was trying to grow as a performer in that one, so I gave him a little extra credit for that too.
I think for me, the fact that Vader only gets 1 official match on the show and there's no moonsault.
Yeah.
If they give him a chance to get a big stiff forearm, knock Gigante down, and give him a moonsault, wouldn't even be considering it for worst match of the series.
Right, yeah, gotcha.
At all.
Well, thank your helmet, Vader, because you got off of the worst match of the series list for Al that way.
Yeah.
God, that would have killed you.
It would not have felt good, no. It It would not have felt good at all.
All right, for series overall, we've got some other awards to hand out. So first up, the best commentary team. Now we obviously only have a couple options on this series.
Yeah.
We have Eric Bischoff or we have Tony and JR. If you're picking the latter, as I assume we both will,
Yeah.
Which show's performance did you like the most?
I think as a whole, we got more out of them with the extra stuff, the extra presentation and talk of, visiting and everything, and really the extra feel in show 1.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily think they did as a whole. They covered, the matches better on show 1 versus show 2 or 3. But yeah, just that extra stuff, and they really sell the sort of foreign intrigue aspect of it, and stranger in a strange land kind of thing, and they call the matches well throughout the whole series. So there's no bad show for them commentary wise. But yeah, I think 1 has just the extra stuff, plus how they cover the main event and the post match thing as well.
Yeah, it was definitely fun hearing their travel story kind of feel on that show because it was new.
Mm-hmm.
That really does help that performance, certainly.
Yeah, with 2 and 3, I'm still not convinced they even ever left. There's no proof otherwise.
This is true.
Yeah. not in one shot of them at a table. I guess they didn't feel confident enough to try to do would have been early blue screen rear projection effects. Look, here's the crowd behind us.
Oh my gosh, that'd be the AWA Team Challenge series all over again.
Yeah. If you're like me and you watch a lot of old movies, anytime you get to a film from the 50s and they're driving a car and they're just rear projecting background behind them, that's what it looked like, which I would have been all there for.
For me, it is really hard to pick, as all 3 performances are really good from Tony and JR, but I'm going to go with Super Show 2.
Okay.
I thought the 2 just really seemed to have a ton of fun with that show, and they got really salty at times, hilariously so. Whether it was talking about how New Japan's refereeing and rules enforcement put WCWs to shame, or JR taking pot shots at the University of Miami football team.
That's true, yeah.
Plus, we got Tony's wonderful, he's still standing. Oh, there he goes.
That's true, yeah.
For a Fujinami versus Choshu.
That was good, yeah.
It's a really good performance that gave entertaining moments in its own right, in addition to complementing the matches.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, we hand out an award for best promos or non-match segments, but there weren't many of those on this series.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to go through some of the non-match stuff that we did have, and feel free to chime in as we go.
Okay.
On Super Show 1, we had the introduction featuring the welcome party for WCW wrestlers visiting Japan, a kind of sort of Triforce appearance, and the 4 horsemen going shopping in Japan in an all too brief bit that I would have watched extended to pay-per-view length.
Yeah, I wish they could have sort of done a little more with that whole thing in general, not just the 4 horsemen bit. Sort of splice them in more throughout the show.
Yes.
I think that'd been nice.
Yeah, that would have been a fun thing to do. Super Show 1 also had the outro sequence with Ric Flair interrupting Fujinami's news briefing to evidently random show staff and wrestlers rather than reporters.
Yeah, right.
JR trying to interview Fujinami, who claims that he doesn't speak English well and proceeds to speak English perfectly well. And Tony Schiavone wandering into frame briefly and sheepishly retreating.
Yeah.
Super Show 2, we had the post-match bit with Vader steam cleaning Elegante's face.
Yeah.
Muda's entrance with the acrobats that was so very, very cool.
Yeah. The very timely Flying Melinda's reference there.
Yes. Super Show 3 had Muda's shadow play entrance that was really awesome as well. Oh, and Super Show 1, of course, had Flair and Fujinami's entrances for their match, complete with their respective nations' national anthems.
True, yeah.
A very, very cool ceremonial part to that show. And that also just gives us the other non-match stuff was just the sheer amount of ceremony and presentation that we got mostly on Super Show 1, but a little bit on 2 and 3 here and there, including the very formal ring introductions and the massive, massive, massive trophies handed out for every title match and some others besides.
Yeah, that time of the year must have been great for trophy shops.
Oh my gosh, yes. Must do good business in Japan.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Not all matches are the usual sort of singles or tag match. So, what was your favorite gimmick match on the series? And I will remind, because there were very few gimmicks on this series, that we count gimmick as including anything other than a standard singles match and standard 2-man versus 2-man tag match.
Yeah. So the really only option were the couple of 6-man tag matches they had, which, to be fair, on their own did deliver.
Yes.
Liger being in one obviously helps. That poor guy getting beaten pillar to post in the one in show 3 stands out. Like I said, especially when we covered the last AWA sort of sideshow, the 6-man match gives you an extra person on each side, so everyone gets more breathing room and you can have more stuff you can do. So just a little extra spice you can add to a match like that, which is why 6-man, 8-man, and 10-man tag matches are very common in Japan, especially because so much of New Japan at this point is everyone's in some sort of faction, so pick 4 faction guys and fight for the faction guys.
Yeah. And between the 6-man tags, I'm going to guess it's probably the Liger one, based off of earlier comments.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for me as well, there weren't really many gimmick matches on this series other than the 6-man tags. So I will also go with Super Show 2's Liger, Aoyagi, and Nogami versus Saito, Hanaga, and Machine. It was just some wild action and a really good match story of strategy and quick change-ups, slowly turning the tide against Raw strength. Do you have a worst type of gimmick match for this series?
I mean, it's really just the 2 like total, right?
Yeah.
Like just those 2 6-man, so not really.
Yeah, me too. I didn't even have a worst match, so I definitely don't have a worst gimmick match on the series.
Yeah.
There's not even a match that seems to even be hurt by its gimmick, unless you maybe count having the commentary overdubbed in post-production by an unprepared commentator, which I don't.
No, yeah. Again, like I said, the actual match quality in the 6-man on show 3 isn't bad. Nothing about it being 6-man hurts it at all.
Right, yeah. Al, you had a terrific suggestion for an award.
Yes.
Since this series consisted of severely trimmed down versions of Japanese shows. The top 3 matches that were cut that you really wish were on the WCW version of the series. So what are your 3 matches, Al?
Yes. Okay, so first I have a match that I really hope to see based, I would say honestly based on the one competitor, which is the match they cut from show 3, which is Genichiro Tenryu versus Riki Choshu.
Mm-hmm.
Choshu was obviously very good in his match, as I mentioned, with Fujinami. So the idea of saying to see him again really appealed to me, and they cut it. So that sucked.
Yes.
It will help me in an aspect later on, you can probably guess, but as an overall show thing, it's disappointing, as strong as show 3 is, to not have that match on there.
Yes, yeah.
Again, Tenryu was the face of the war promotion. So him and Choshu fighting, again, it was a big war versus New Japan match, which they cut. So really, even more hurting that theme that was on the show, but just not in the American one. I want to hint at before, again, I'm disappointed to not see, is the Hiroshi Hase versus Antonio Inoki match they cut from show 2. Aside from the fact that Hiroshi Hase is very good, it'd be nice to get him on a 3rd show. The fact that Inoki is not on a show at any point in this series with 3 shows is a real shock. As covered, he was injured before training for the 3rd show, so he would have gotten a tag match, but we didn't. So that hurts, makes this one feel even worse because, maybe I thought, oh, we'll get him next year, don't worry about it, but then they don't.
Yeah, true.
So 3rd pick for me was a tricky one, as they all tend to be, because there was 2 matches that were cut that I went on my way before recording to watch and write at least a brief overview for them. So I really decided, do I include the Doom versus Bama Bigelow and Vader match from show 1 that was cut, or do I include the Steiner Brothers versus the Hellraisers, that being Road Warrior Hawk and Kazuki Sasaki match? They're both good ones, but for me, the ludicrous, both no selling and hard selling you get from the Steiners and at least half of the Road Warriors, and Sasaki is no slouch, obviously, as we covered. Like, your line is that Sasaki is a guy like built to wrestle Steiners, like to take their bumps.
Yes. And to just like be one of the few guys that they actually allow to dominate them fully at points in matches. Yeah, which is amazing.
Yeah. Admittedly, the Hellraisers match does have a disappointing count-out finish, but as a reminder, the way they get to the count-out finish is by doing a doomsday device to the guy from the ring apron to the floor into the metal barricade around the ring to knock the two people out. So I gave him a little bit of pass on that. That's one way to get to a count-out.
Yeah, as long as it's an epic enough ending, even with that, then I think you can look aside from that.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, for my choices. First up, Super Show 2, Antonio Inoki versus Hiroshi Hase. More Hiroshi Hase, please.
Yeah.
Plus, cutting Inoki's match was just insane, as you noted.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you had done a cross-promotional show with the WWF and there was a Hulk Hogan match on the show and you cut it.
Yeah, that's comparable. Yeah.
That big of a just like, what? Wait, what?
It would be like if New Japan had done their own cut version of this, which they ran the whole thing, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And they gone, you know what? We don't really need that Fujinami versus Flair match. Let's just cut that.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Like just a massive performer from the other company. And you're like, no, that's gone.
Or if we go back to Hiroshi Hase, if someone they're like, Hase's great, but we don't need a third Sting match. Let's just cut that Sting Hase match.
Yep. Yeah. Next up, Super Show 3, Tatsumi Fujinami versus Takashi Ishikawa.
Mm-hmm.
More Fujinami, please.
Yeah.
Yes, that is the entire thought process for this one.
Ishikawa was quite good from what I've seen as well. So yeah, he's no slouch.
And next up, I was also picking between those same two matches that you were, Al, Bigelow Invader versus Doom and Hellraisers versus Steiner Brothers.
Right.
I also went with Hellraisers versus Steiner Brothers. I was really torn, but I love the Steiners in this era, and the team of Hawk and Kensuke Steiner line this Sasaki sounds really, really fun, even before I heard your description of what actually happened in the match.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to picture, like, thinking of it before I heard your depictions of what happened in both of the matches. Which one do I genuinely think I would have been more excited to see? And this one just edges ahead by a hair.
That's fair.
All right. The best performer with a single appearance on the series. So who was it you would have really loved to see again the most?
So there's a lot of great options to pick from here. The two most obvious ones, for me anyways, are Ultimo Dragon, who we only got in Super Show 3, does really well against the Liger there.
I definitely would have loved to see that outfit again.
Oh yeah, for sure. Or the guy who I talked about his match being cut and being disappointed, and that being Ricky Chosu. So, I mean, I gave him MVP and highlighted his match so strongly, there's no way I'm not picking Ricky Chosu here.
All right, yeah. As you said, there were a lot of good one-time performers on this series, including some of our favorites. We have Ultimo Dragon, Ric Flair, Vader, and Dusty all showing up once.
Mm-hmm.
But as with you, actually, I'm going to go for the same guy, who I'm pretty sure we'll never get to see again on a WCW show.
I don't think so, no.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
That being Ricky Choshu. He really, really impressed me in his expertly crafted match against Fujinami, and I wanted to see more from him, but sadly it was not to be. So here's hoping I'm wrong and we actually get more Choshu on a later series somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Most improved. Is there anyone you thought was not too great when they first showed up, but later on they really improved and turned things around?
Yeah, so that was a tricky one because most people start out really high or they start out not so high and they kind of stay at that point. I think for me, and this is a case where a guy had 3 matches, so you have a broader spectrum to cover. Going from his first match, which had all this build-up and storyline, and then didn't really do that well and didn't last too long, to being a strong performer in 6-man and tag matches later, it would be Akira Nagami, or Akira in all caps. I really feel because it seems like he has so much to offer in that first match, and it goes so short and doesn't feel right. So thankfully, he got more chances to show up.
Yes, yeah. Well, this is interesting. The less than stellar initial appearance definitely wasn't his fault, but I'm also going with Akira Nagami.
Okay.
He was so ill-served by his first appearance against Liger, possibly due to poor editing, that's unclear, though booking him to make his big return only to lose was kind of sad to begin with.
Yeah.
Still, it was very clear that he had potential, so it was good to see that he got to fulfill that on the later shows, with some really fun showings that let him show a lot more of his stuff. I particularly love his single-leg crabs on Super Show 2. even if he did keep getting beat up for putting them on too close to the enemy corner.
That's true, yeah.
A good example of a wrestler turning things around purely by getting the chance to actually show what he could do after being hidden before.
Mm-hmm.
And now, the overall show rankings. There's only 3 shows on this series, so we're going to rank them in order. So let's go from, okay, it sounds wrong to say worst because all of these are good. So from least best to best.
That's fair.
So what's your order, Al?
So what I had to do is I looked at the matches, and then I looked at what I picked for my thing we'll get to later, which is the ultimate Super Show card.
Mm-hmm.
How many matches from each show end up on there, and that was a big factor.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah. To be fair, some matches don't make my ultimate card what I'll cover because like it'll be a singles match with somebody, which is good, but then a tag match, so it's really not a knock against the other show that I don't pick more from it. But going based on that, going I guess least best to best would be Super Show 1, which has a sort of mixed bag as like overall really great matches. It has a lot of people that do well, but do really well on other shows, but still is a very strong one. Then for me, it's Super Show 3, because it has some really strong matches, but also has the fact that it's so chopped up does hurt it a bit. And again, it's covered, they did a weird thing where they randomly cut one match and then just threw on the 6-man and threw Bischoff to do commentary. It's a strike against it. It's a really strong match show quality wise, but as a show, it's kind of mixed. If it didn't have as great matches, it'd probably be in third.
Right.
So that makes the best combination for me of sort of style, pump circumstance, and match quality, that being Super Show 2.
All right. Okay, for me, in third place is Super Show 3.
Okay.
In second place is Super Show 2. And in first place is Super Show 1.
Okay.
I found all 3 shows pretty much on a par in terms of the action. They're all exceptional.
Mm-hmm.
So the difference for me was primarily presentation.
That's fair.
The sense of gravitas that each show had, the ceremony, the conveyed importance, and quite frankly, the amount of the show it feels like we're getting to see.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I found a notable decline across the series. Super Show 1 felt almost like a normal pay-per-view. You could certainly tell it was trimmed down, but you still got a lot of the style and spectacle of a wrestling show, with major moments like the national anthem entrances, at least limited promos, post-match celebrations with huge trophies, and videos building up the event. Much of that disappears or is at least reduced on Super Show 2, and on Super Show 3 it declines even more to the point that it felt like a production I could have made by just chopping it together a few matches I liked. So, strange as it might be, I ordered the 3 shows largely based on their non-wrestling content.
I get that. No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if they had given half the importance and sort of extra feel to Super Show 3 that they gave to Super Show 1, it'd be no contest. That's top one.
I think so, yeah. There's such stellar matches on that show. I mean, match quality is high for the entire series, but there are some absolutely amazing ones on Super Show 3, and it's such a shame that it just falls flat in show production.
Yeah.
Because the actual matches on that are just great.
You could take it in so many different parts and sort of dissect it. Just picking one wrestler that's on all 3 shows, for instance. Muda is very good on all 3 shows, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But booking-wise, he's treated best by Super Show 3. He's that great match with Chono.
Yes.
He gets to show off really well in Super Show 2, but again, that weird sort of flat, abrupt finish they use in Super Show 2 with that tag match with him and Sting, it's a bit disappointing. Likewise, again, as good as the action is with him and Sting in the singles match, again, the sort of weird way that I guess the mist is not disqualification or there aren't disqualifications.
So weird.
Just picking him, you can sort of see how he's treated across those. That helps, one factor in helping me decide how to rank the shows.
Yeah. I do agree. I think Super Show 3 is amazing from a match standpoint. I think I said on our actual episode when we were doing our wrap-up that was the one that if you need more than just the matches to enjoy a wrestling show, you're going to have the hardest time liking Super Show 3.
Mm-hmm.
I think you will like it, but you'll have the hardest time liking it.
No question, yeah.
That's where, for me, it was weird, but it's the non-wrestling content that did it.
I get that.
We've given our awards and our analysis, but there's one more thing that we'd like to do here to have some fun. Our ultimate super shows. Altus shows, maybe?
Yeah.
So here's the rules. And this was super hard this time, like even beyond the normal.
It was, yeah.
I'm genuinely curious if we've actually got the same card.
It'd be interesting to see.
Each of us designs a card featuring 8 matches drawn from the actual Super Show matches. We can only use each performer as a competitor once. So someone can show up as a manager or a commentator or interference or some other role on other matches, but you can only use them once as an actual competitor. You can use any match in any position. You are not required to pick an actual main event for your main event.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, I don't know about you, Al, but 8 matches was so hard. There's so many other matches that each choice eliminates.
Oh, I will say I ended up putting 6 on mine, but didn't end up putting 8, so then maybe that's why mine was a little easier.
Oh, okay. That's fine. I think this is a series where we can make an exception to our normal rule because it was bonkers.
Gotcha. Okay, so my super show, I guess, begins with Jushin Liger versus Ultimo Dragon from Super Show 3. For me, I like to space out singles and tag matches, which I know you like as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I followed that up with the sentimental choice for me, which is the Dusty and Dustin Rhodes versus Kim Duck and Masa Saito match from Super Show 2.
Okay.
Following that with the Sting versus Roshi Hase match from Super Show 3.
All right.
Add a little gravitas and some titles online, doing that changing booking wise to have Masahiro Chono versus Great Muta from Super Show 3 as my 4th position.
All right.
And again, because I want to put some tag in there, I have the match I highlighted earlier, which is the Enforcers versus O'Hara and Kushinaka, also in Super Show 2.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, my main event, as you can probably guess from it not mentioned yet, Riki Choshu versus Tatsumi Fujinami from Super Show 2.
All right.
That's my 6 match card.
Very cool. So we do not have the same card.
Okay.
In part because I have 8 matches, but also I only matched 4 of those.
Oh, okay.
So my opener was Super Show 3, El Samurai and Jax versus Nobukazu Orihara and Kitahara. A really fun 6-man tag to open the show. Hopefully on Earth 91-93, Orihara gets to remain conscious for the ending, and Tony and JR get to provide commentary.
A big idea.
My second match, Super Show 2, Vader versus Elegante.
Okay.
I will be honest, this is on here because I ran out of matches that I rated more highly. And I wanted to reach 8.
Yeah. I was going to say, if we're going to include 7, I'd probably throw that one on there for me personally as well.
To be honest, though, it is fun to get that helmet spot on the show.
Sure, yeah.
Super Show 2, O'Hara and Kushinaka versus the Enforcers. There is no way that I'm leaving complaining Larry Zbyszko off of my show.
Of course.
Then Super Show 3, Jushin Thunder Liger versus Ultimo Dragon. Duh.
Yeah.
Just an incredible match. There's no way I can leave it off. Follow that up with Super Show 2's the Rhodeses versus Saito and Duck. This just felt like a good one to put after Liger and Dragon. The fun of seeing Dusty and Dustin together would let the surely exhausted crowd enjoy themselves while they recovered their energy.
Yeah, makes sense.
Follow that up with Super Show 3, Muta versus Chono. I was really torn between this and Muta versus Sting because I wanted to get Sting on the card somehow, but this match was just such a good redemption for this pairing that I had to choose it.
Absolutely, yeah.
So sorry, Sting. 7th, we have Super Show 1, the Steiners versus Sasaki and Hase. Such a crazy, intense, high-velocity, high-impact tag match, so there's no way that I could leave it off. Also, sorry, Sting. Because that meant I couldn't have Sting versus Hase, which was also really good.
Yeah.
And so my final match is Super Show 1, Fujinami versus Flair.
Okay.
Obviously, I had to have Fujinami on the show.
Yeah, of course.
I picked this one over the Choshu match because I think it's pretty much the reason the series exists. It's the strongest example of the partnership between WCW and New Japan. On Earth 9193, I think WCW just accepts the finish and schedules a normal rematch, but the show ends with a heck of a brawl featuring most of the New Japan wrestlers against the Earth 9193 Horsemen, Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Larry Zbyszko, and Vader.
Oh, with that.
I think it takes Liger, Dragon, Chono, and Muda to drive Vader off.
That sounds about right, yeah.
I like that. I genuinely was afraid going into this just because of the sheer number of things that get eliminated with each match that we would end up having the same show.
Right.
Just
yeah.
with maybe different orders or something, but we got a good amount of difference in there still, so that was good.
Yeah, like I said, if I was going to make mine 7, I'd probably throw Vader and Gigante on there, and while technically I can't include it, if I was to include match 8, I'd be breaking the rules a bit to include the Steiner's Hellraisers one.
True, yeah.
I would get to be to 8.
Now it's time for some re-gimmicking.
Yeah.
Each of us has been given a match from each other's card, and we have to give that match a new gimmick or stipulation that would turn it into something new. We provided our matches to each other ahead of time, but we have not heard each other's re-gimmickings. So this should be fun. So Al, do you want to do the one that you did for me first, or the one that you had me do for you?
I'll do mine for you if you want.
Okay. So from Al, I requested Supershow 2's Vader versus Elegante.
I made my feelings pretty clear about Gigante and about Vader by now. So I'm like, what do I do rather than just having a wrestler match? And I thought, let me try to be timely. So this show is taking place in 1992, 1993. So I'm going to take a note from video games.
Okay.
Specifically, Street Fighter 2. My goal is to create the obstacle stage from Street Fighter 2, in which, between matches, you plant Vader and Gigante in the ring with 2 full-size cars. And they're given a minute to smash cars, and whoever smashes the car the most gets the most points and wins.
Nice.
You can guess who wins that match.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure a single falling fridge would detonate a car pretty much, so.
Yeah. I mean, any show that has Vader doing a moonsault to the top of a car, how is that not a 5-star show?
The only concern I have is that sounds awfully like Vader being in the Junkyard Invitational.
Well,
which would have made that better, let's be clear, but still.
Yeah, he would have taken out 5 or 6 people and made it a lot cleaner.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Vader would just have knocked everyone out in the opening 30 seconds and then just waltzed over to the gate. So yeah, why didn't they do that?
Exactly.
All right. So from me, Al requested Super Show 2, The Enforcers versus Ohara and Koshinaka. So Al, I present to you the Debate Club match. Since Zbyszko is so good at running his mouth, let's give him the opportunity to do so at length.
Sounds good.
This is mostly a standard tag match, single fall to finish. However, every 2 minutes, a bell rings, signaling the start of debate time. At that time, the wrestlers in the ring must pause, and the wrestlers on the apron are brought to the stage where 2 podiums have been set up. There, they are each posed a question dealing with the differing ways that World Championship Wrestling and New Japan Pro Wrestling handle rules, such as the 10 count versus 20 count, or moves off the top rope being illegal or legal. The response order is determined by a panel of 5 judges composed of Sting, Vader, Vader's Helmet, Hiroshi Hase, and Antonio Inoki, the latter 2 inexplicably cut from WCW's broadcast.
Oh.
Vader's Helmet expresses its votes by emitting steam, which Vader swears it does on its own, even though it strangely always agrees with him.
I mean, I'm not going to argue with that guy.
The 5 judges evaluate which in-ring competitor was doing better at the time of the bell ringing, and that team's debater gets to choose whether they speak first or second. Then, both speakers have 1 minute to make their initial point, and then the first speaker gets an additional 15 seconds for a quick rebuttal, since the second speaker had a slight advantage by getting to hear their points first.
Sure.
An interpreter is, of course, provided. The debate is scored by a second 5-judge panel, consisting of JR, Tony Schiavone, Tiger Hattori, and 2 Japanese men whose names are never given by the WCW broadcast.
Okay.
The winner of the debate earns an advantage for his team in the next 2-minute match segment. The Debate Club, a literal club composed of a large gold trophy with a wooden handle on it.
Oh, so the Debate Club is not like the Bullet Club then. It's very different.
No, it's actually a giant club.
Yes.
Made of a trophy.
Gotcha.
Only the team that won the debate is allowed to use the club for that segment. The other team can disarm them, but can't actually strike with the club, or they'll be disqualified. The match proceeds to a single fall by pinfall or submission. However, once that happens, the losing side can challenge the winning side to one last debate as to the legitimacy of the pinfall to try to get it overturned and continue the match. After a hard-fought match and several tense debates, the enforcers at first lose by pinfall when O'Hara uses the debate club on Arn, but Zbyszko successfully annoys everyone at the post-pinfall debate, breaking every rule about time and continuing talking until they agree to let the match continue, just so he'll shut up.
That sounds about right.
Leading to an Arn spinebuster for the win. Not wishing to listen to Zbyszko complain anymore, O'Hara and Koshinaka just accept defeat.
Nice.
I'll admit I'm proud of that one.
Yeah, it was good. I'll be honest, when you were laying out the judges at first, I was waiting for the end to be, and for some reason, Patty Mullen.
I thought of doing a reference to Clash of the Champions.
Yeah.
I kind of did, if you notice, because there's 5 judges and we do only get 3.
I did notice that, yes.
Yeah.
That's fair enough. Yeah, I like that. That's good.
Is it wrong that I kind of feel like that would almost be interesting to watch?
Yeah, I can see that. I kind of like the idea, too, like if like the breakpoint happens when Arn's got O'Hara and like a Fred Hellick about to do a suplex, and they call debate time, so he sort of holds him in the headlock for a while before letting him go.
Yeah, or just like, they literally have to freeze in place.
Exactly, yeah.
And that wraps up our coverage of the WCW New Japan Super Shows. So, what have we got coming up next?
Mm-hmm.
Well, first up for our bridge show, Capital Combat. I have been waiting for this show for a long time.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And I know you have too, Al.
I have, yes.
Taking place in Washington, D.C., this wonderfully weird show features The Undertaker in his Mead Mark Callis gimmick, Jim Cornette in a cage, Paul Ellering versus Teddy Long with their hair on the line, the Road Warriors teaming with Norman the Lunatic of all people,
Yeah.
Lex Luger versus Ric Flair for the world title with what I believe is the first appearance in WCW of Elegante,
Yes.
and of course, Sting turning out to be best buds with RoboCop.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, WCW really presented RoboCop on their show as though he was a real person who existed in the same reality as Sting, and the poor horseman had to sell fear of this science fiction movie character and take the segment totally seriously.
Mm-hmm.
I also recall poor Gordon Soley getting roped in somehow.
I believe so, yes.
Oh my goodness. And now, our next series.
It's coming.
An evening of unspeakable horror.
It's coming.
Terrifying destruction.
It's coming.
A howling good time with the monsters of professional wrestling. It's coming! October 28th, Halloween Havoc 89, settling the score. A pay-per-view event bordering on the edge of insanity. Call your cable operator for availability, if you dare.
Next up, Halloween Havoc. Lasting from 1989 through 2000, Halloween Havoc is one of WCW's longest series. I believe it's beaten only by Starrcade and the Great American Bash.
Yes.
According to Tony Schiavone, this is what he thinks of as WCW's WrestleMania, not Starrcade.
Interesting.
It does certainly have the big spectacle going for it on many years, including matches like the Thunderdome match, Chamber of Horrors match, in which the goal is to strap someone to an electric chair and turn it on, which I'm sure WCW will not make look silly as heck.
No.
A monster truck match between Hogan and Giant, and Vampire Tony Schiavone.
Ah, yes.
It also has some quite important matches like Hogan versus Flair with both men's career on the line in 1994, causing a retirement I'm sure stuck totally, and that hasn't already been disproven by multiple prior series that we've done.
No, not at all.
Plus, Randy Savage versus DDP makes an appearance.
Oh, yeah.
Vader versus the Guardian Angel in a reprise of some of your favorite matches from past series.
Nice.
Dustin Rhodes versus Steve Austin.
Yeah.
And a little match called Hogan Warrior 2 that people might have heard about.
Mm-hmm.
Astonishingly, I genuinely forgot that was on this series until I was going through the matches. There's just so much infamous insanity on the Halloween Havoc series that even that can get lost in the shuffle.
That's true, yeah.
So our upcoming releases are, in October, Capital Combat. And in November, or possibly October 31st if I can manage it, we'll start our new series with Halloween Havoc 1989. Look forward to them. If you've enjoyed listening to us tonight, you can find us on Facebook as Let's Go to the Ring. A link will be available in the episode description. Follow us for episode announcements and other show details, and share your own thoughts about each show as we go through. You can subscribe to our show on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, YouTube Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, Spotify, TuneIn, or Pandora. And please, if you've enjoyed this show, give us a rating or review, and share the show through your favorite social media platforms to help others discover us. Many thanks to ProWrestlingHistory.com for attendance figures, and to Gina Trujillo for our logo. This is Bob Moore for Alec Pridgeon, signing off. Good night, everybody.
Happy wrestling.
And in 20th place, still holding on, Ric Flair. Did I say in 20th place?
You did, yeah.
Wow. Sorry, Rick.